Welcome back to the OHIO podcast, everybody. And I'm joined by my special guest, Derik Vance. Derik, welcome to the OHIO podcast, my friend.
Eric, first and foremost, huge thank you for inviting me on. Definitely look forward to the conversation that we're going to have here for the next few minutes.
Yeah, so some of you might recognize Derik. Derik was at our tailgate last year at the spring game. Traveled over to Columbus from Indiana, and big Buckeye fan. Derik, also you have your own show, man. Tell everybody about what you do on the podcasting side.
Yeah, aside from from this great show that you've built, and we've talked about that in the past, I do a little bit of auto racing, specifically IndyCar here in the Midwest. It is the Push to Pass podcast we were just talking about a little bit ago. We go live, myself along with Josh Roberts and Michael Monroe. We go live, like I said, on Tuesday nights this evening, actually around 8 o'clock. You can check that out on YouTube. And then also we go on Rumble. I know you use that platform as well. And then any podcast or any other podcast platform that your listeners may use, you can find it there if you're in IndyCar or if you're looking to get into IndyCar. Definitely check us out.
Push to Pass, everybody. So you into that? Check it out, everyone. So, all right, Derik, let's talk about your Ohio State fandom, since this is an Ohio State podcast and this is a fan interview, man. Tell me how you became an Ohio State fan.
Well, as you said, I do live in central Indiana, but that doesn't mean I forgot where I came from. Grew up in Northwest Ohio, lived there for about 21 years, and then that's when I moved over to central Indiana for the job that I currently have. But definitely growing up, obviously through and through a Ohio State guy. Obviously, football was number one. Basketball I followed as well, not as closely as I do football. I can remember guys like Carlos Snow. I can remember Lorenzo Styles, Sean Springs, David Boston, Bobby Hoying, who I have an autographed picture of actually in my office, along with the great Orlando Pace. So I can remember all of those greats, obviously living through the John Cooper era, and I know we've talked about that at great length before, and then moving from him to I guess Lieutenant Governor, I guess is what we call him now.
Yeah.
Jim Tressel, definitely loved that era, and then you had the one down year there with Luke Fickle, and then Urban Meyer takes over, and what a tremendous ride. And program that Urban Meyer obviously took over Ohio State, but what he leveled it up, and he put it to bigger and better heights. Obviously, winning the first college football playoff there a few moons ago, so to say. And then obviously Urban steps down, and then Ryan Day steps in. And what a whirlwind it's been having Ryan Day, the ups and the downs, the agonies, those close defeats in the playoff. I can think Georgia right offhand, and then also too obviously something that we try not to talk about, his record against that team up north. But won't forget, I think, anytime soon, the ride that he, along with his team, 2024 Ohio State Buckeyes, took us this year, doing what they did, winning 10 games, and then the brutal, the gauntlet of the college football playoff schedule that was in front of them. I mean, you tell me a team that has played a tougher set of opponents than what Ohio State did, and it just all culminated to that obvious night in January where Ohio State was crowned for the ninth time the college football national champions.
Well said, Derik. Um, so, where did your fandom come from? Were you born into this thing, or is it just kind of the friends and family? Like, how did little Derik become a Buckeye fan?
Well, I don't know if Derek's ever been little. First, let me correct that. But obviously, born into it, like I said, growing up in Northwest Ohio, in the for your listeners, the Toledo area, and you can pinpoint it down there a little bit. But obviously, my dad's side, all Ohio State fans. So like I said, it just kind of grew on me, and that's kind of what I was raised on. That's what I knew. When it come to the fall, we'd always get together for the first Ohio State game, and the ball just kind of rolled from there. I remember One of my greatest memories was, and you'll probably remember this, Eric, as well. Maurice Claret's first game as a Buckeye. He was so hyped in the performance that he put on, especially not only the first game of the year, but that whole season. Obviously, culminated with the big win against the team up north that put Ohio State in the Tostitos Fiesta Bowl, and obviously they brought home another national title there. So again, born and bred into it, absolutely love it, live it 365 days a year, even if Ryan Day does have a unsatisfactory record when it comes to playing that team up north.
You've mentioned it a couple times, Ryan Day's record. What are your thoughts about Ryan Day?
Oh man, where do you begin? I mean, I was a little gun shy. I will say when Urban Meyer named Ryan Day the head coach. Obviously, I know you guys have talked about it on great length here. We've had discussions about it where I'm not a huge fan of giving a first time head coach the program at the likes of what Ohio State is. Ryan Day obviously had to have a couple years to feel the process out. I thought up until this year, I thought he had way too much on his plate. He may have been over his head just a little bit, and obviously as a head coach, you have to oversee the whole operation. And I thought Ryan Day was only overseeing what the offensive side of the football was doing. I thought it was a great hire bringing in Jim Knowles, even though he kind of jumped ship, but that's neither here nor there. I thought Jim Knowles took care of the defensive side really well, but then when Ryan Day brought in Chip Kelly, I said, well, maybe this is the time. Maybe it finally clicked in his brain that he has to oversee the whole operation, offense, defense, and special teams. And I thought he finally found somebody that he could trust with Chip Kelly. Obviously, the relationship that was well documented showed, obviously, especially when it come to the playoff, how well that offense clicked. And I think there's no doubt about that. So the jury may still be out a little bit on Ryan Day, but you know what, though? He may have bought himself a little bit of time doing what he did and taking that group of men, molding them into the national champions that they are this year.
Yeah, I think so. Now, come back at me at the end of November if we go up to Ann Arbor and lay another stinker. But I think all of a sudden the Boo Birds will be back out again. But I think that this is a different Ryan Day. I just do. The Ryan Day we saw in that playoff run is not the same Ryan Day we saw on November 30th of last year. It's not. And for anybody who tells me it is, I physically saw a different guy. I physically, with my own eyes, saw a different guy. And at his opening press conference of spring ball, dude admitted pressure's off, man. Like there will always be pressure at Ohio State, but hey, man, I've won one now, dude, and I love his confidence right now. I love how he's kind of taking the program and just kind of it's my program. This is my program. These are my players. He's taking ownership of all of it. He feels like a head coach now. I think that was a great thing that you said there about how he had to learn how to be a head coach because he wasn't one, and it took 6 years. I would say that's pretty quick, in all honesty, compared to what most guys never make it out of. They're head coach for 3-4 years and they never get another opportunity because they're not successful. Ryan Day's proven that he's done a pretty good job. Let's go back a little bit now. You mentioned Cooper, Tressel, the year with Vic, Urban Meyer, and now Ryan Day. Outside of Ryan Day, who do you think, Derek? Who was your favorite coach out of that group? Notwithstanding Ryan Day.
My favorite out of that group, obviously, was Jim Tressel. I loved how he coached. He played it close to the vest.
Me too.
He was great on the defensive side of the ball. Great in special teams. If you play defense and you play ball control, offense just has to get a little bit of a break. And that's exactly what I thought Jim Tressel defined as a football coach. And it sucked to see him go. in the unfortunate circumstances he ran into. But his time at Ohio State, nonetheless, was served. And again, he won a national title. Urban Meyer won a national title. Ryan Day won a national title. So I love the trajectory that the Ohio State football program is on right now.
What's your favorite Jim Tressel memory?
Oh, I think the one that sticks out of my mind the most, and I don't know where this is going to stack with you, Eric. Don't mind the dog, but when that opening introduction, when Jim
Yeah.
Tressel was introduced at the basketball game, and just the words, you're be prouder of the young men not only in the classroom, but what was it, 316 days in Ann Arbor, Michigan. I love that, and as soon as I heard that, I've never heard of Jim Tressel before in my life. I had to obviously do, I don't know if Google was invented then, but definitely had to do a search and a deep dive to see who this guy was. But as soon as I heard him at that men's basketball game utter those words, I was sold.
Yeah, it was. Yeah, I was in college then, so I remember that. I remember that very well. And I knew he was from Youngstown State. I knew he'd won some national championships at Youngstown State, but this was Ohio State. This was a whole different animal, and I wasn't sure about this guy, but you know, year number two going out there wins a national championship, but in year number one did something that I really hadn't seen in my lifetime, and that was go in Ann Arbor and beat them. And you know, I, I remember the ones that Cooper had, but the one win that Cooper had, but I was a kiddo, I was a little kid. I was a college kid now, and so I was all about that. Um, so obviously, great memory about Jim Tressel there. If Ryan Day wins another one, does he pass Tressel, Meyer in your mind?
I mean, I guess that kind of depends on what you're basing it on. I mean, if you're basing it on national titles, then yes, obviously. And if it's just overall criteria, I think it obviously you have to put right now Ryan Day up there with the likes of Jim Tressel, with the likes of Urban Meyer. Obviously, Ryan Day is a prodigy of Urban Meyer, so you know Ryan Day knew football before he met Urban Meyer, obviously. But
Right.
if he wins another one, I think the argument can be made, even though his record again, revert back to this, his record is lackluster when it comes to the team up north. Obviously, we kind of got spoiled a little bit with what Jim Tressel did and then what Urban Meyer did against in that game that last Saturday in November. But yes, if there's you can obviously make a case for Ryan Day to be put up there even up past Jim Tressel and Urban Meyer, even though that asterisk right now of that record against the team up north is his one blemish.
It is currently, but that could change. We could change. We don't know exactly what's going to happen up there. What's your thoughts on the whole cheating scandal in Ann Arbor?
The NCAA has absolutely no power, and if something happens, so be it. But I compare the NCAA to the federal government. They don't have any power. Someone else is running it. What's the NCAA gonna do? I mean, seriously, if they were gonna do something, they'd have done it already. But yeah, if the NCAA does something, fine. If not, I'm not gonna be surprised if it just gets swept under the rug.
Mm, so you're kind of like with me. I'm so worried that this thing's gonna get dragged to court. If it gets dragged to court, the NCAA's got no shot because they're a toothless organization, is my opinion. But we'll see. I mean, a lot of people think um, that the hammer's coming, but if nothing happens, what does that say to any program? I guess you could just go out and do whatever you want. Nothing matters, right?
I mean, that's the standard that's set. I mean, what punishment? What real punishment has the team up north been given really? I mean, outside of their
They
former
haven't
coach,
been given anything. It's all been
right,
the
right,
individual coaches who've left.
right. Outside of their former coach, which I just found it quite interesting that when this all broke out, their former coach and his coaching staff kind of went their own separate ways. They went to the NFL and to other jobs. I find that interesting, but. I mean, outside what's actually been done to the program? Are they really going to be stripped of the national title? No. Are they going to get a bowl ban? No, they'd have done that already. Are they going to get scholarships taken away? Possibly, but I'd lean towards no. So what's really going to happen here?
Well,
That's
what's a
one.
scholarship when you have NIL anyways?
Well, that and just to piggyback off NIL. What okay? What's a scholarship? What's a commitment? Because I can commit to you for a year and then I can go take my services as LeBron James said. I can take my talent somewhere else if I want to after a year. So what's a scholarship? What's a commitment?
Yeah, good point. Good question. Good question, man. Yeah, absolutely. So let's turn the page and look at this year's roster and team a little bit. What's your expectations on the 2025 team?
Oh, wow. Obviously, I think they're going to be young on the defensive side of the ball. I think they're going to have to be carried up front by Larry Johnson and his Rushman group, obviously, because like I said, they're just going to be so young. And even they're going to be young up front too, I guess, to a degree. Caleb Downs returning starter. He's gonna have to be the veteran back there. Him and Sonny Styles as well. Kind of curious. This has to be a make or break year, I think, for C.J. Hicks as well. And then kind of curious to see the talent that Tim Walton has brought in at corner, as highly talented and highly touted as that group is, especially their rating. Obviously, we know what that rating actually means. Sometimes it doesn't mean diddly poo, to steal a line from Jim Mora, but I think they're going to be young on the defensive side of the ball, and then bringing in a new voice in Matt Patricia, I think is going to be an interesting dynamic to that as well. Offensively, I like them offensively. I know you're losing. They lost Emeka Abuka, but I think it's just a crop of young receivers that are hungry, that are going to be right there waiting in the wings, obviously to take the lead of Jeremiah Smith. Obviously, he's going to be the guy on the skill positions on the outside. I love the talent that they have at tight end as well. I know that's sometimes a forgotten position at Ohio State, but I think that can make a difference as well. Uh, Up front, I do like what they did last year, but obviously with Justin Fry moving on, going to be interesting to see how that group gels. And then I think the big mystery is going to be, right now it does sound like that Julian Sane is going to be has a leg up in the competition, but how many meaningful snaps has he taken under center? Zero.
One
So
maybe.
maybe, yeah, maybe one. So obviously he's going to be, the big question mark there. You go from Will Howard, who was a wily veteran, to steal a line from the NFL. You go from a wily veteran to a bright-eyed redshirt freshman. So it's going to be interesting to see, and then also too in the backfield where you lose Travion Henderson, and I don't think the Ohio State makes the run that they make last year if Kushan Junkins is not picked up in NIL, because Eric, you can make the argument, or agree or argue against me how fresh Travion Henderson's legs were, not only throughout the year but in that playoff run. He had a totally different gear game in and game out. And if Junkins isn't back there relieving him, I don't think we see that additional gear that Travion Henderson had last year. So you got to replace two running backs there. I think James Peoples is definitely on his way to be the next star at Ohio State in the backfield. But again, just it's going to be interesting to see who's under center. If it is Julian Sane, and if he's as good as what people are making him out to be, obviously he's going to have a plethora of receivers to throw to, but obviously it's going to take time for him to mature into a college quarterback. Maybe it happens quicker than what we think.
Yeah, I stand corrected. It was not Julian Saint who took the meaningful snap. It was Devin Brown, because when Howard went out on that injury when he got knocked up, that was Devin Brown they brought in, not. So I said one, I was wrong. It's actually zero. You're right. As for your comment on Travion Henderson, you're 100% correct. In fact, I can make the argument that Quinshawn wasn't as explosive in the playoffs as he was in the regular season. I think it's because they did lean a little bit more heavier on him during the regular season with the idea that when we get to the playoffs, Trevion Henderson will be fresh. And so it paid off pretty well. So I would say that was a good decision on their part. You brought up you brought up our new defensive coordinator, Matt Patricia. What are your thoughts on him?
Oh, obviously, coming from the New England Patriots and love him or hate him, you can make the argument that he was coached under one of the best, if not the best, minds in pro football, college football now. In Bill Belichick, love him or hate him, and he knows football inside and out. He knows more about football than me and Eric will ever be able to tell you. Obviously, Patricia did get a shot in the NFL with the Detroit Lions. Flopped a little bit. Sometimes defensive coordinators just don't make great head coaches, especially in the NFL when the NFL is a offensive driven league. So I don't kind of weigh what the lack of success Patricia had in the NFL just for the simple fact again he is a defensive mind in an offensive league, so to say. So I'm curious to see how he adapts his concepts into college football. And I think he transitions real well. And again, I'm going to be curious to see with a young defense that he has to mold with Caleb Downs, the leader in the back half, obviously, what Patricia can do on the college level. Just I'm curious to see that.
Let's flip it over to the other side of the ball and let's talk Brian Hartline. What's your thoughts on Brian Hartline being promoted to the new offensive coordinator position?
Well, my first question is, and again, we touched on this to open up the segment, is Ryan Day going to allow Brian Hartline to call the plays, or is Brian Hartline going to be, and I hate to say this, is he going to be a patsy, and is Ryan Day going to be going back to calling the plays on the offense? I'm curious to see that. Does Ryan Day trust Brian Hartline enough to allow him to be allow Ryan Day's hands off and allows Brian Hartline to call the offense, or is Ryan Day when things get tight and the game's tight? Say, let's say for example, I don't know, first game of the year against Texas, and Ohio State's up or they're driving, late game. Is Ryan Day gonna go tight and gonna want to take the play calling back, or does he have enough trust in Brian Hartline to allow him to call plays? So that's what I'm gonna curious to watch.
Yeah, I'm going to be curious. That's a good scenario. And if he does trust Brian Hartline, what kind of play caller in those scenarios will Brian Hartline be? Will he be a gunslinger and take more risks, or will he understand, down distance time, position of game, and understand that, hey, even though the fans aren't going to like it, this might be where I need to run the football to try to, get them to spend another timeout or run more clock, etc. So it'll be very interesting to get that aspect of the kind of play caller he's going to end up being. And it's year number one. And I've been trying to tell everybody this, Derek. Don't temper your expectations. This is his first year at this. Um, I also think that it's very interesting to me that Ryan Day is kind of hitching his wagon to this. That this is going to fall back on Ryan Day at the end of the day. And so I think it's in Ryan Day's best interest that Brian Hartline succeeds. If Brian Hartline ends up being a very successful play caller, one of two things are going to happen here. He's either going to go on to be a head coach somewhere else, making millions of dollars as a head coach of another program, in which Ryan Day gets a lot of credit for that. Or he is going to be Ryan Day's replacement if and when the day comes when Ryan Day says, I think I'm going to go try my hand in the NFL. Your thoughts?
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. And let me give you one more scenario.
Sure.
What if the offense stumbles out of the gate?
Hmm.
What if there's no continuity the first couple games, and the talk gets louder and louder and louder after each game? Is Ryan Day going to take the play calling back there? And if and when that day comes, as you said, that doomsday scenario where Ryan Day, the right NFL job comes open, and I'm going to disagree with you a little bit on this. If the right NFL job comes open that interests Ryan Day, I personally don't want to see Brian Hartline be named the head coach. I want to see. I do want to see a former Buckeye player be named a head coach.
Can I guess who it is?
Well, I can give you another hint.
Okay,
Congratulations to
Eddie
Mr.
George.
Falcon himself. Yes, huge congratulations goes
Yeah.
out to him.
Hey, I threw that out there. I threw that out there on social media when Eddie got the job at Bowling Green. Is if Eddie goes to Bowling Green and is wildly successful, and Brian Hartline does does show success and growth as a play caller, Ross Bjork one day might have one heck of a decision on his hands.
Yeah, and if memory serves me correctly in the memory bank, and I'm getting a little old at this, isn't there another former Ohio State coach who cut his teeth at Bowling Green?
Yeah, on Urban Meyer.
Exactly.
Hmm. Yeah. That turned out pretty well for him too. Which those who don't know the story, the athletic director at Bowling Green actually called Urban Meyer and asked him, "Hey, who should I look at?" And Urban Meyer goes, "I got one name for you." And he's like, "Well, I need more than one name." He goes, "Nope." He goes, "When you interview this guy, it'll be the last interview you have." And he gave him Eddie George's name, and then so he calls Eddie George, who's driving through Bowling Green, Kentucky. What a wild story, right? Just crazy. But yeah, so Urban Meyer thought pretty highly of Eddie George to say that's the one guy you need to call. Urban Meyer knows more people in this business. I mean, next to Nick Saban, probably as far as former coaches, knows more people in the business than him. Uh, and for him to offer that's the one guy you need to go talk to. What a compliment, dude, that Eddie George received there, man. So I've been telling everybody I am, and I don't know if you're a Toledo fan or a Bowling Green fan from where you were from, but I'm gonna be wearing orange after I take my scarlet off. I'm wearing orange. I'm rooting for Eddie.
You know what? I'm right there with you. I spent more time in Bowling Green than I have Toledo, so
That was probably a
definitely
wise decision.
yeah, definitely going to be rocking the orange there. And I will support any former Ohio State player
Yeah.
that is as a football coach, even if they do take a job up in that state up there. I will obviously support them 100%. But I think Eddie George is definitely going to take that Bowling Green program, as Zach Smith will say. I think he's going to have that program leveled up in no time.
What about another former player here, Luke Fickle, over in Madison, Wisconsin? Some of the shines off of of him, man. It seems to be having a tough time up there.
Yeah, it definitely is. I think the expanding of the Big Ten. Can we really say it's the Big Ten anymore? Maybe the Big 20. But yeah, the
Getting
expansion
there.
of the conference. Yeah, the expansion of the conference. I think has kind of hurt Luke Fickle a little bit. Obviously, he was able to find those diamonds in the rough at Cincinnati. Was it Damian Ritter? I believe that was his name. And then you had the corner that was a first round pick for the Philadelphia Eagles. So he was able to find those diamonds in the rough. But I think he's just having a hard time of it in Wisconsin. They seem to be stuck in a rut, so to say, a little bit, maybe middle of the pack of the Big Ten. I don't know what kind of splash Luke Fickle needs to make, but definitely I've heard the guy talk before. Haven't got to meet him, but I've heard him talk before. Definitely would run through a wall for him. Definitely has a passion for football. And again, if the job opened up, again, he's been able to cut his teeth, and I wouldn't mind him being considered for the Ohio State job, just like I wouldn't mind, Mike Vrabel if it ever came available again. I wouldn't mind him. He's cut his teeth with the Tennessee Titans, and I think he was a advisor for the Browns, so I wouldn't mind seeing his name if and when that day ever was to rise that Ryan Day found a perfect job in the NFL.
So you live there in Indianapolis area, man. You're a Buckeye fan living in the middle of the Hoosier State. Give everybody who has not been to Indiana kind of the lay of the land here. You've got Purdue fans to the north, Indiana fans to the south. There's probably some Notre Dame fans mixed in. How many Buckeye fans are there, and what's it like living in Indy? And who owns the town of Indy when it comes to college?
I think there's more Ohio State fans in the central Indiana area than what people outside of the great state of Ohio think. Obviously, you don't hear lately anyway. You don't hear anything from Purdue fans till basketball season comes around. Hopefully they get that turned around. Their football program. And the same thing for Indiana up until this year. Obviously, you didn't hear any, their football program was dormant. But the yeoman's job that Kirk Signetti and his staff did at Indiana, I'm kind of curious to see how he backs up a year number two now with some of those transfer players that he brought from James Madison kind of moved on. Kind of curious to see how that football program takes off. So during football, you get more of the Notre Dame fans here in Indiana that I think you get from Purdue and Indiana. Like I said, I think Purdue fans lay dormant until basketball season, obviously for obvious reasons. But yeah, there's more fans here in Indiana of Ohio State than what you think.
Yeah. So I end up working with a lot of the engineers from Indiana, and they're all Purdue people because that's an engineering school, and so it's a well-known engineering school. So yeah, I have to work a lot with the Purdue people, but it's always funny to me to watch them with their their hatred of Indiana. And I'm like, guys, you have no idea what real hate is, man. You guys are all like kissing cousins, man. You have no idea. So that being said, what does Derek think of Michigan fans?
You know what? And this is probably going to come as quite a shock to you. But I do have, as I mentioned earlier, one of the co-hosts of the podcast that I do is a huge Michigan fan. So obviously
I
the
know
last,
this.
yeah, I know the last 10 years or so I was able to kind of lay it in, but I wouldn't rub it in because I knew these things go in cycles. Obviously, we've seen in the early '90s with the lack of success that John Cooper had, and I can still remember right now. Tim Biakabatuka is probably scoring another touchdown
Yeah.
somewhere. So, but you know what? I have a couple cousins that actually live in downtown Detroit that are obviously the team up north fans as well. I get along with them. It's the ones that, and again, I know you can probably play to this a little bit. It's kind of like the Cleveland Browns fans. It's the ones I can't stand. The team up north fans I can't stand are the ones that are bandwagoners. That when they had Lloyd Carr towards those end of the years when it was Lloyd Carr and then it went to Rich Rodriguez and they were just getting their tails bashed in, especially that last Saturday in November. Didn't hear much from them. But then when Jim Harbaugh comes in, a new sheriff in town, and obviously Ohio State craps the bed in that last Saturday in November, then you hear from them. So if you're not a bandwagoner and you can take the good with the bad, I'm perfectly fine with that. It's the bandwagoners, like you Cleveland Browns fans. You know exactly what I'm talking
Woo!
about. Yeah, and you know what? And I'm not a Cleveland Browns fan by any stretch of the imagination. You know what? If anything, I feel sorry for them. You want to talk about a revolving door at quarterback since they came back in 2000? That would be what you're looking at if you look up in the dictionary revolving door. But yeah, that's the one type of fan, especially when it comes to that team. And I'm not saying the Cleveland Browns. That if you are a bandwagoner, I have no time for you.
Yeah, it's interesting, isn't it? I get a kick out of how many of them started their Twitter accounts in 2022. It's like every single one of them. You look it up, man, and very few of them have were on Twitter before that. It's like all of a sudden they win one game and now they're all over the place on Twitter. But yeah, it's pretty funny. So yeah, I just wanted to kind of get your feel, man, of what it's like being a Buckeye fan there in the middle of the state of Indiana.
But but Eric, we have to give them credit because if that team up north does not win the national title 2 years ago, you don't see the drive from the 2024 Ohio State Buckeyes that you've seen this year. If the 2024 team up north does not try to plant the flag like a bunch of jerks, you don't see the fire and passion from Jack Sawyer that you've seen just this past season.
I agree with that, and I do think that was a catalyst for this run. that in some weird way, it sparked something in this team that was lacking. And so, yeah, it's true. I've often said that these two programs are yin and yang. They need one another. That they're not who they are without the other. And I know it's hard to admit that because you hate them so much because they are your opposite, but yet at the same time, they're very similar programs in a lot of ways. You know, when it comes to size of fan bases, success on the field, there is a lot of similarities there. But it's an amazing rivalry. It used to be a rivalry that had a lot of respect. That and if there's anything that seems to have changed in the last 10 to 15 years, I think the respect has been replaced with disdain. There was disdain for each other during the Woody Bo era, but there was still respect. That respect's gone. There's like zero respect anymore between these two. It's just all disdain.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. And for people that may not be a part of this rivalry, let me compare it. And you made a great point to both these teams needing each other. Let's go back to the '80s where you had in the NBA. And again, I'm not a huge fan of the NBA. I don't think it's basketball by any stretch, but the Lakers needed the Celtics and vice versa.
Hmm.
I think you're absolutely right. And
Magic needed Bird. Yeah, yeah.
correct, correct. And the one thing that can always get a team up north fan to shut up is what coach put that team's football program on the map. Oh wait, it was an Ohio guy, Bo Schembechler. That's right.
Yeah. Who by the way never won a national championship. Bo Schembechler went over, and he had a losing record in the postseason, which is
Well,
wild to think about, but it's true.
well, let's not
Uh,
talk about losing. Let's not talk about losing records, John Cooper.
yeah. Oh well. I still think, Derek, if John Cooper would have coached in this era, if we would have had this postseason era in the 90s, John Cooper would have won two national championships. I think the 96 team and the 98 team were the best rosters in college football, hands down. They both just had stupid games where they screwed up. One
Was
against Michigan,
what
one against Michigan State.
was the '96 game? Was that the team? Was that '96 or '98 where the was it Jermaine was driving late and throws a pick in the at the goal line against
96.
Michigan State? Okay.
Yeah, so I want to say we lost to Michigan State in 98 though. But it
I
wasn't I
thought
don't
the I
I
thought
don't
one of those the loss to Michigan State. They threw a. I thought it was Jermaine threw a pick late.
you got me wondering what year that was now. I want to say it was 98 that we lost to no, hold on cuz 96 we did beat Michigan, I thought. So maybe it was 96. So you might be right. Yeah, and then which
I
which
said
would have been Joe Germain.
okay, yeah, because like I said I can picture if I remember correctly, and again, and I want to say they Ohio State was driving in the. It's now the where the band comes out at towards that end zone, and he throws a pick right there at the goal line with only seconds remaining. I think if I remember correctly.
So I stand corrected. 96 was the loss against Michigan. It was a 13-9 loss. Gosh, what a bummer. 21 ranked Michigan. So it had to be 98. Yeah, 98. So I was right the first time. 98 was when we lost to Michigan State, and it was yeah, it was a terrible game that game. But yeah, those are a long time ago, forcing me to really go back in the memory banks there. Yeah, 28-24 loss to Michigan State, November 7th, 1998. It was an unranked Michigan State team, by the way, and the number one ranked team in the country, Ohio State.
Because I even take this a step further, and I want to say the corner for Michigan State read the play correctly, stepped in to the passing lane, picked it off. I want to say his last name was is it Hill? I
I
believe it.
I have
I
no
think it's
idea.
Ronaldo Hill. For some reason, that's sticking out. But you know what? To Cooper's credit, and again, as much as I've harped on him for being 2-10-1, John Cooper was hell of a recruiter,
Yeah, he
hell of a
was.
recruiter, and he was a great football coach up until that last Saturday in November. Hell
Yep.
of a recruiter, great football coach, great mind, but and I make the comparison, and actually I'm going to steal this from my brother. We were talking about the Chris Holtman tenure at Ohio State
Ugh.
in basketball. Ready for this? Chris Holtman, great basketball coach, but when that calendar turned over to January, forget about it. He's long gone. Forget about it.
Yeah. Let's not talk about basketball.
Oh, you know what?
Please.
If they can find somebody, and Jake Diebler, great mind, knows more about basketball than me and Eric ever will. Great mind, but if they can find somebody, and I don't know if that's in the portal recruiting, I don't know what that is, but if they can find somebody that can become a closer, this team isn't that far off.
No, they're not. I have, well, this team had two major flaws. Number one, Aaron Bradshaw was not who you wanted him to be. Um, it totally inconsistent. So you had no post presence, right? Sean Stewart's playing out of position most of the time. You're literally playing in the Big Ten conference where big guys rule with one arm behind your back. So and number two is they could not make free throws and close games out for the life of them. They literally had Pitt, Oregon beat, and all you gotta do is make a free throw, one more free throw, and you win those games, and you're going to an NCAA tournament right now. It literally razor thin, and I think Jake Diebler, in my opinion, this is my opinion. A lot of people want him fired. You cannot give up on this guy. I think I think Ross Bjork hired Jake Diebler with the idea of we're in this for the long haul. It is not a short-term fix. I'm not going after Coach May and turn this thing around real fast where he's going to turn around and leave in a year or two for the Indiana job, which probably would have happened if he would have come to Columbus, Ohio, by the way, guys. I think he took Diebler with thinking, I'm going at this with the long haul, the Ryan Day effect. He's going to learn how to be a head coach, but when he does, we've got a 20-year 20-year tenured head coach here at Ohio State who could win multiple Big Ten championships, multiple NCAA championships, something on that caliber. That's what he's thinking. I understand the mindset here. So don't give up on him, guys. Give him another year, man. Um,
Yeah, I think just to add to your point, I think you're absolutely right. I thought the growth of Devin Royal, I thought was
oh,
huge
phenomenal.
from last year to this year, and I like the emergence of the Mobley kid as
Yeah.
well. Obviously, I think Thornton needs to
Which,
level up.
by the way, both those guys, Derek, weren't even supposed to be starters this year. Those were your bench players coming off the bench, Mobley and Royal, and they got thrust into the starting lineup because Michi Johnson quit on the team, and Bradshaw was nowhere to be found half the season.
That may be the big disappointment of the year. I remember when Michi Johnson first started at Ohio State. I remember the energy and excitement and passion he brought to the floor, and I was expecting to see that return for his senior year. And you want to talk about a huge disappointment outside of Bradshaw, which I thought he'd be better. But yeah, without having an inside presence, I mean, look what Purdue did 4 years with Zach Edey. Kind of mirror that a little bit. Go out and find somebody that's just that's just a badass that doesn't care, and find somebody that can play the post. And again, Thornton can shoot from the outside. You've seen what Mobley can do. Royal can still, he can still level up as well. So they're not bad. Just find somebody that can close and get somebody that can play the post.
Yep, I agree, man. I agree. Moving on from basketball because if most of our people don't want to talk about it, they don't. They just I don't want to talk about it. So moving on from that, man. So let's kind of wrap this thing up a little bit and talk a little bit about how you found the podcast, man. How did you get in touch with us?
That's an interesting story, Eric, and I don't know if I've ever told you, but just scrolling through, Facebook one night, and it said, suggested podcast or suggested something, and I started listening, and after about 20 minutes, I was like, you know what, these guys think exactly like I do. Well, maybe not Chris as much as Eric, but and I started listening, and you know what? I was like, you know what? they're going to offer a call-in show. What the hell? I'm going to take a chance and do that. And then getting to finally meet you guys this past spring definitely was awesome as well. Look forward to that again. I don't know if it's much of a spring game as it is showcase. I think I think we all know why Ohio State's doing that, so players don't get poached. But yeah, definitely the content that you guys put out week in and week out, not only from your podcast but your other shows on the network as well, and then the articles that you guys put out, definitely building something here, and then tying it all together with what you've done with the college huddle, bringing all of college football, each conference, each team together, just amazing. And it's tough to find a platform that is not a major platform that does that has that kind of thinking and ideology that you guys do here at the Ohio Podcast and College Huddle as well.
Oh man, I appreciate that, dude. Yeah, so it's all I always like to find out. So Facebook, man. Okay, yeah. So Facebook was the first social media that we dove into when we started the podcast 6 years ago. We started to build our Facebook page, and I think right now we have over 9,000 followers on Facebook on our business page, and then we have a fan page as well where people can post and everything. And I think there's 7,000 on that one. Of course, there's probably some back and forth where people follow both, but yeah, Facebook has always been good to us. We have 5,000 followers, a little over 5,000 on Twitter now, so yeah, social media is interesting to me, man, because at the end of the day, Derek, I don't know how many people are real. Like, it's like out of those 9,000, or is it like half? Maybe I don't know. Like, it's crazy to me how social media works. But I know this much, man. You are real. You are a real fan. You are a real dude. So I'm gonna end this interview, Derek, with the famous question: what does it mean to Derik Vance to be a Buckeye?
Oh wow! I guess I should have prepared a little more for this. It's like getting it's getting like a pop quiz question on a Friday when you're definitely looking forward to the weekend. But what it means to me to be a Buckeye, I think, is the thing that comes to mind the most, and I don't know if Ohio State still uses it in their athletic department, but the tradition. You think first and foremost, you think of how dominant in tradition the football program is, to the traditions they have on Saturdays at the shoe, those, or the traditions that they have in during basketball games, which apparently we're not supposed to mention on here. And then you think about the excellence in academics that comes to somebody that possesses a degree from the Ohio State University, graduating the top of the top. And then, you have the traditions of sports, you have the excellence in the classroom, and then just the people that are molded that come from that school. You think about, everybody that has from, we talked about it, Eddie George to not Ryan Day, Eddie George to Luke Fickle to Mike Vrabel. I mean, that's just football coaches. That's not saying other people. Jack Nicholas, for example, use
Yeah.
him. Bob Knight, the late great Bob Knight, who learned basketball, I say, from Ohio State and then
Mhm.
took it elsewhere. But yeah, just again, it comes back to, like I said, the traditions, especially that everything that revolves around football. It's Saturday in the horseshoe. I mean, that you name me a better atmosphere on a Saturday than at the horseshoe, and we've both experienced that. It's the excellence in the classroom, and then to put it all together, it's the people that make up the Ohio State University.
Tell everybody, Derek, where they can find your podcasting. Was it Push to Pass? I think you called it. Was that the name of it?
Absolutely. If you're in IndyCar, or if you want to get into IndyCar, go check us out tonight over at the Push to Pass podcast. You can find that on Facebook, as we talked about earlier. We'll go live on YouTube around 8 o'clock. Also on Twitter, Rumble, which I know you guys use that platform as well. Definitely love the people over at Rumble. Go check us out again if you're into IndyCar and you want a different perspective. You'll find it there. Or if you're new to IndyCar and you've heard about it but you've never actually dug into it, we can help you out there as well. We'll go live tonight at 8 p.m. Not to take away from the viewership here on the Ohio Podcast.
I gotta ask, dude, one more question. Since you mentioned it, give me a reason why IndyCar is better than F1.
A reason why IndyCar is better than F1.
Yeah.
Um, well, F1 doesn't go on. Okay, let me ask this because again, I've just dabbled into F1. So let me ask this, and then I can answer that. Does F1 always race on street circuits and road circuits?
Yes.
Okay. Then IndyCar is better than F1 because IndyCar goes on super speedways at 230 miles an hour.
There you go. There's your answer. So, yeah. So a lot of people might not know the difference between IndyCar and F1, and I say the biggest difference is IndyCar is an American sport. F1 is a global sport, and that's really one of the big difference. All Indy cars are very similar. F1 cars are very different. So one driver's car in F1 versus another driver's car in F1 can be very, very different. Where in Indy car, they're all pretty much the same, and so you're looking more at skill, and strategy in IndyCar, where F1 it's more about engineering. So your engineer, you as a driver, you don't have to be the best driver to win in F1. You just have to have the best car. So I think that's one of the biggest difference, and one of the reasons why, even though I gravitate more towards F1, one of the reasons why I think at the end of the day, IndyCar might actually be a superior sport, even though I gravitate towards F1. How about that? How about that take from someone who doesn't, you all thought I was just football, huh?
Well, here's what I challenge you to do, and obviously this weekend isn't going to be the right course to do it. They're going to be on a road course out in the Thermal Club out in Thermal, California. But when IndyCar goes to Indianapolis on a 2.5 mile oval, when you're wide open at 230 miles an hour, or Nashville on the super speedway there, or the Milwaukee Mile where they're wide open, or Iowa, Eric, check it out on Fox.
Yeah,
If you like
I'll
F1,
watch
if you
it.
like F1, check out IndyCar
Yeah.
when they're on an oval.
I watched. I've been to Mid Ohio and watched Indy racing at Mid Ohio, which is just down the road from where I live here in Delaware. But I literally used to live 10 minutes from Mid Ohio. So yeah.
Funny story about that. Actually, I went to Mid Ohio for the first time last year. Me and the other co-host Michael Monroe. He drove. I couldn't believe, if you've never been to Mid Ohio in Lexington, Ohio, this sports car course is out. You want to talk about out in the middle of nowhere? Mid Ohio is out in the middle of nowhere.
Yeah, it is. It's just Lexington is just a small little community just west of well, it's where Cade Stover's from. And Cade Stover's a big farm boy, right? Y'all remember that, right? So that's where the Mid Ohio track is. And yeah, it's just out in the middle of, like Derek said, it's the middle of nowhere, man. So but yeah, I used to live about 10 minutes from there. So fun little factoid there, man. Derek, so thank you so much for joining me, man. I really do appreciate it. It's good catching up with you. I can't wait to see you there next month at the tailgate. Hopefully, we'll catch up there again as well, man. Be kind to one another. I owe someone's OH. Sing Carmen High with all your heart. Derek, you know what to do. Till next time, OH.
I O.
Go Bucks.